Hi, in this video what I'd like to do is just work through some points in Worksheet 1. I'm not going to go into it in excessive detail, but I want to pick my way through some of the notes in there just to help draw your attention and speak to you about it. Watch this video if you are particularly nervous about Python and you want something to support the text and the worksheet to help you. So the very first thing is you've started Paizo. To test that it works, you should have some text like this. I'm using an earlier version. Shouldn't make a huge difference. If it creates a problem, I will change the version. The very first thing is to create a program, and the easiest program to write is a print statement, well, a print function, open, close bracket. Inside are two speech marks, and inside you write a bit of text. So that is what is called a string, a bit of text. Hit enter and it outputs the result. You can also do it in a file. So if we come over here, on the left hand side, what we essentially have is the ability to save our code in a file. Okay, so I'm going to run this file. Okay, right click the tab at the top and I go to run file, and you notice it says executing the file and it says the same thing. So there are two ways of executing code and running code. Now in the worksheet there are some nice variations which you should try and you should explore. The next concept in the worksheet will be about variables. If you're not sure about variables, go back to the lecture notes and watch the videos. But let's take a very simple assignment operation. So what that x equals 7 is it's assigning the value 7 to x. And let's see what's inside x once we assign it. We write print x and we right click and run that file, we will see the value is 7. If we change the value of x, for example, and we make it 5 and we print that statement, what we should have, what would you expect? You would expect that output to say, and that output to say, let's test it out. I'll let you work it out. There we go. So the first is 7, the second is 5. Right, so let's move on. Let's combine. In the worksheet, Matthew combines different variables. So let's have a second variable. For another variable, notice we're using letters. Okay, so let's make the second variable equal the first one plus 1, not exclamation mark, and let's print what y should have in it. So let's just work it out. At this point, what would y output? So we're going to we'll get rid of that one because we don't want too many of them, right? We'll just pop these other ones away. So what's that print y statement going to say? Well, x was 7, but then we reassigned it. We put 5, overwrote it to 5. Y will equal what? Okay, answer the question in your mind, make a note of what that is, and let's run the file and see if you're correct. It is 6. And why is it 6 and not 8? Because 7 has been overwritten by x in the second line, and then in the third line, y takes the x value and adds 1 to it, gives you 6. Now, if you find that confusing, you should be very patient and understand that programs work downward. So line 2 is executed first, then line 4. If you use the assignment operator, what you might have understood as an equal sign, right? Then, and you just do this, you basically take the right-hand value and you put it into x. It doesn't matter what was in x before, it'll put only 7 there. So in the second line here, it does exactly the same. So that's quite useful. You can do very interesting combinations. We can do x times 2, for example. And in the worksheet, let's get rid of that to keep it simple. In the worksheet, what you'll find is that these variations exist. So x equals 5, y equals 10. Play with the variations, explore them, don't rush from them, and give yourself a chance. Now, we do get errors, and what I'm going to do with the errors is sidestep them for the time being because it's a huge topic, and I want you to pay attention to the sheet and what it says about errors. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to look at, on page 4 of the worksheet, a very important step that Matthew introduces, on how to write more than one line, or how to write what he calls, and I think he does actually name it as, let me just double check, a function. Okay, I want to stick to the language he calls. Right, so we had a print statement which was something like, hello everyone watching this video. Okay, so I can just run it as we did before, and over here, there we go, and I've mistyped watching. Okay, now that's just one line. But what we have in programming are functions, and a function is a piece of code that does something. It gathers together many lines in a sequence or a loop or something and pulls them together. So we're going to create from the sheet our first function. We define our function using this word def, have a space, we give it a name, and we need to give it an open close bracket. This, inside this bracket, will be any value you pass to this function. Now that's a very important concept which we'll come back to later. At the moment we are just creating a function where we ask it to do stuff. We don't give it anything, we just ask it to do stuff. At the end of this line you put a colon, not a semicolon, a colon. This print statement, if we want it to be inside the function, we tab it. And a single tab means that now this print statement exists inside this function. Okay, called say hello. Now if I try to run it, what you'll notice is that nothing appears. Where's that print statement gone? I don't understand it. What's happened is that the print statement, because it's tabbed inside, is now inside this function. We have to run that function. So what we do, and the easiest way to do it, is double click say hello, come over to your console, type in the name of your function, open close bracket. I think it's pop one in for me anyway, so I've got too many. Hang on, let me just tidy that up. Okay, so it matches this pattern here in the top line. Okay, you notice I write it. So I'm saying here I am calling the function. Watch the language Matthew uses in the sheet, and I hit enter and it executes the lines inside that function. So what I'm going to do is bring this video to an end in a moment. Just want to introduce a couple of concepts that Matthew looks ahead with. He introduces a concept of a list. So let's get that out of the way. A list, he has various different versions, but let's take the simplest one, right? This is a sequence of numbers. There's a square bracket, and this will play a very big part in how you code. There's a sequence of numbers. They're all the same type of data. They're all numbers, okay? Somewhere in here, somewhere in the lecture notes, which we'll go back to, you will tackle data types. And you can do very clever things with this. You can loop through and display each value one at a time. And this is a very simple loop. So if I put that in here, look how it looks, right? Now this is familiarity for you. At this stage, don't worry if you think, oh my goodness, why are you writing it like this and not writing it in a different way, and I'm not sure how to write it. The very first steps in learning a language is to practice and get familiar with how it looks. So you must write code. Now look, if I do this. Now, I'm not going to get too complicated here, but this value here, I, is going to pick each of these numbers out every time it goes around the loop. So if I run this loop, it will display 3, 6, 1, 2. Let's see what happens when I run it. And it does it one at a time, it picks them out. Here's another variation. Let's, instead of numbers, let's just put a sequence of strings. So let's say Paris. Let's say we list a bunch of cities, London or London, and let's say Madrid, and let's also say that'll do. Okay, just 3 European cities. Apologies to all our non-European students. This is just a random selection. Now, what do you expect it to print? If I had numbers in there, what will happen now? Okay, think about it and let's execute the code and see what happens. It takes each value as you go around the loop, picks it out, and it outputs it. Paris, London, Madrid. Okay, so that gives you a flavor of some of the concepts you are going to get later on. What I would recommend is that you work your way through the worksheet and the exercises. I have one last variation that I'd like to introduce, and that is this function called range. Now, if I type in the word range with a curly bracket, with a normal bracket, and I put, say, 10 in, what it does is it actually has a counter. This becomes a counter, and it starts at 0 and will go all the way up to this number one by one. It's easier to see than to explain. And notice I missed something out. I don't know if any of you spotted it, but I should have had a colon at the end of this line. You'll get used to it and you'll make simple mistakes like that. Have a look at what its output. It's gone up to 10, but it hasn't included 10. Keep an eye on that. It started at 0 and there are 10 digits. So it's gone 0, round the loop again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This range function will appear a lot in future weeks. So just get a sense of it, a flavor of it, and thank you very, very much for your time.